personality creates your personal reality.
Authentic power is when your personality comes to serve the energy of your soul.
The truth is the body is one ecosystem. You can get to the root cause and everything goes away.
Thank you for tuning in to the Reconditioned podcast. I'm Lauren Vaknine. I'm a health writer and holistic wellness coach. And my own journey from disability to remission taught me that wellness through a mind-body approach can take time when we don't know where to begin. And that's why I created this podcast, to bring you the answers to all your well-being questions in the most accessible way possible. Whether you're suffering from chronic illness, raising children in a world of conflicting information, or you simply want to feel empowered and motivated to become the best version of yourself, join me along with expert guests as we uncover the most actionable ways to recondition ourselves back to wellness. This episode of Reconditioned is sponsored by Mega Home Water Distillers, the most reliable and efficient home drinking water distiller. Mega Home are kindly offering listeners of the Reconditioned podcast a 5% discount. Just use the code CONDITION5 at checkout. That's CONDITION 5. Thank you to Mega Home. Hi everyone, thank you for being here with me on Reconditioned with Lauren Vaknine. Today's episode was really special. It's with a very close friend of mine called Karina Grant. She is an energy healer, and it's hard to put into words how special this woman is and what she's done for my life. In terms of her friendship and her she's a true spiritual being. And being in her presence does something to you. And I really wanted to get her on the show to talk about all the healing modalities she practices and healing modalities that are available, because it is something that I get asked often, and this was her area of expertise. And it was really amazing talking to her in this way, because we are good friends and we talk a lot, but it was really nice kind of delving into her work in that depth. Now, I do want to preface it and say that I am still suffering from this trigeminal neuralgia, but I have decided to take a new approach based on everything I'm learning about the psychosomatic element of pain. I'm following some really incredible mentors like Nicole Sachs, who's, if you suffer from chronic pain, she's got a podcast called The Cure for Chronic Pain. It's brilliant. And I'm using the Curable app, which is also amazing, and Dr. John Sarno's books, and it's all really helping. But one of the things they talk about is releasing yourself from the fear, and I have realised that the biggest aspect of this for me is the fear that it's going to come back, the fear that it's going to come on. And the thing is I'm working through it, and I truly believe I'm going to beat this. But I had the option of take to my bed every time I have an episode, you know, a flare up with it, which at the moment is kind of happening quite often, And then I have to cancel all my podcast episodes that I've had scheduled, and I have to cancel everything I've got going on. It's just not practical, and I don't want to do that. So the other option was you live through it and you allow the pain to come, but you carry on your life. Don't fear the pain. So the reason I wanted to preface that was because I was experiencing a bit of pain on and off. I was having these little episodes that kind of feel like nerve attacks in my face when I was talking to Karina. And so I had to pause a few times. And I also feel like I sounded a bit more flat than usual, which is just because I was trying not to open my mouth as much as I usually would when I speak. So if you notice that, I promise you it's not because I was miserable. I enjoyed being with Karina and recording and talking about all this stuff so much. I just had to kind of tone down the way I talk. And you know what, guys, this is reality. This is my reality of, you know, overcoming a lifetime of an autoimmune disease and the things that it's left behind and the things that have been triggered because of it. So this is part of my journey and part of what led me to do this podcast and to do the work I do and to be immersed in the world of alternative health and natural health. And this is the reality. So I could sit there and pretend that everything's perfect all the time and I've, you know, quote unquote made myself healthy, but that's not the reality of it. I have overcome being disabled, but in the wake of an autoimmune disease, a lot of stuff was left over, and I'm still picking up the pieces. I'm still managing that on a day-to-day basis. And I just thought I wanted to preface that in this episode so you guys can really understand what that means for me, and not just think that I kind of come to these episodes fully prepared, healthy, feeling great. Sometimes I don't, and I just, the choice was record and carry on, or just cancel every time I have some pain, and I don't want to do that. So I'm now speaking to my guests beforehand, explaining the situation if I have to pause, and everyone's super, receptive to that and understanding of that, and so I hope you will be too. And like I said, if I feel a little bit, if it seems that I feel that I sound a little bit flat as I'm recording, I'm not. It's just me trying not to open my mouth so much, which some might say is a good thing. So either way, Karina has so much to offer. So the episode, you will come away having learned a lot about healing and the types of healing she does and why they are so incredible and powerful and impactful, and about how you can implement them into your lives. And all the information about her is in there as well, obviously, and of course in the show notes. So thank you for listening. Of course, as always, if you enjoy this, please share with friends. Please like, follow, subscribe on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, because it really helps other people find the show as well. Share with friends. My favourite podcasts, the ones that friends have told me about, just word of mouth. And of course, follow me on Instagram. I'm at Lauren Vakneen. So without further ado, here is Karina. Karina Grant attended her first Louise Hay seminar aged 12 alongside her family, who were all advocates of self-development. At 24, after attending one of the infamous Tony Robbins seminars, she was opened up to the idea that the mind could also control pain when she walked on hot coals without feeling a thing. From there, a seed was sown and she began her mind-body journey. During her father's battle with Parkinson's, Karina saw the profound impact energy healing had on him, and began training in many different therapeutic modalities and seeking out the most powerful energy healing methods available in order to help others. Karina has since qualified in many of these modalities, including quantum touch, for which she subsequently became an instructor and mentor, bioenergy, Reiki, and is delighted to have more recently launched Permissioning and Transformation, where she takes workshops all around Europe. She works with nurses, healthcare practitioners, public health advisors, research scientists, charities, CEOs, and individuals. Karina's business, Hai Chi Integrated Health Institute, offers powerful resources to facilitate balance and wellness, and now even has its own meditation app. And luckily for me, I am fortunate enough to be able to call her a friend. So thank you for being here with your very, very beautiful energy.
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So the reason I asked you to come on the show is because you're not just a friend to me, you're somewhat a mentor. If I'm ever in a pickle or I'm stressed, you offer the most simplistic but profound advice, and it just always resonates. And this is because you're a rare, authentic healer. And I get asked often about healing modalities, and this really is your area of expertise, so I thought you could offer some great insights into healing modalities are available, and selfishly, it's also just another excuse to be in your presence for an hour. So before we dive into the individual modalities that you practice and teach, I really enjoy hearing about people's journeys and how they got there, because with someone who's done as much as you have, looking on, it can seem as though people like that have it all together and it's always come easily, but I think that's rarely the case. So it might be nice for my listeners to hear about how your journey into integrated health started for you.
Okay. Well, I'll just begin by saying I was very blessed to have grown up in an open-minded household. So my parents took me on breathwork workshops when I was 12 or 13, which was, at the time, I just went along with it. It wasn't something that my friends were doing. And I was almost a bit kind of embarrassed at the time to tell people that's what I was doing. It was only later on that I was grateful for having been given that kind of introduction to life, really, to be exposed to people's work like Louise Hay and things like rebirthing and all these wonderful modalities of that time, really in the 80s and the 90s. And then my parents bought me a ticket to Tony Robbins' seminar. And he is, you probably know his work well, but he's a really amazing personal development coach. And on the UPW workshop, I went with Simon, who's my husband. And I remember Tony saying, we have the ability to create a field of energy around us which can prevent us from feeling pain. And it was like, I just thought, wow, that's incredible. I'd never really heard that before said in such a direct way. Thought, okay, let's see if this works. And it worked. And that was a massive moment for me of, well, what else can we do? What else can the mind do? And it just became an area of interest. But it wasn't my whole life. It was just an area of interest. And then in 2005, my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Actually, he was diagnosed with MSA, which is a much more extreme form of Parkinson's. It's very fast, it's very aggressive. And when that happened, my mum, everybody was very stressed out in the house. And I just remember thinking and saying to my mum, there must be something, we've got all this background knowledge, and she put him on a very good diet and things like that. But I looked onto Google. My first instinct was just to type in energy healing, or healing, I think I put in. And the first thing that came up, literally in the first 3 Google searches, was something called quantum touch. I'd never heard of it before. But it looked like exactly what I wanted, which was a healing modality that you didn't have to be attuned to. You didn't have to have any particular belief system. Anyone could do it. You didn't need to be initiated. I just literally wanted something really grounded, really down to earth that I could help my dad with. And it kind of seemed like that's what it was. So I went along the next day to a workshop and I dragged Simon with me.
What a willing cousin.
Yeah, kind of. But he came for the support. And it was, I have to say, I didn't feel any energy in the first instance, but I went along with it because I kind of understood the principles. And then I left the workshop and I went home and I said to my dad was a very spiritual person. He was extremely open and very, very on the path. I said to him, I've learnt some techniques. I don't know whether they can help or not, but should we give it a go? And he said, sure. And so I started to run the energy, which is basically means just getting the energy flowing, and put my hands on him and did everything I was taught to do in the workshop, which is really using the breath and visualization and very specific techniques to raise your energy to a very high level. And then the other person starts to mirror or entrain to that. And then it's like a reminder to their body to go back into a state of flow. So there's nothing particularly difficult to understand about it. It's actually really simplistic. And I started to work on him. And one of the symptoms of MSA or Parkinson's is that someone's spine is really hunched over, really forward. And after about 45 minutes or an hour or something, he started to straighten up. And it wasn't just that. It was like the grey colour in his face started to just change back into rosy cheeks. It was like just life had been coloured back into his face, that kind of nice rosy cheek colour rather than this really dull grey colour skin. And he sat up straight and he felt really energized and he walked completely straight across the room. And my mum and he and I were amazed. And my mum said, what are you doing? This is crazy. And I said, I honestly, genuinely have no idea what I'm doing. I've just learnt these techniques and I'm giving them a go. And from that point, we decided I would learn everything I could about quantum touch, about energy healing, and I just went on this fast track journey. It was quite an intense way to start. You know, some people come in with a bit of curiosity, but I just went in full power.
Yeah, I'm like that as well. Just do it. Once you know you want to do something
just
and
full
it
power.
feels right, it's like, yeah, just do it all.
Just do it. So I worked on him a few times a week for several months, and he really had so many benefits from it. And after a few months, he went back to his consultant and he was told, you don't have MSA, you just have mild Parkinson's.
Oh my gosh.
We've made a mistake. So, and MSA is very quick. If someone has MSA, they have it for, you know, a few months, and then it's a quick journey. And he didn't have that.
Wow.
He also didn't have many of the Parkinson's symptoms like tremors, things like that. So we really saw firsthand how incredible it could be, and that just really piqued my interest to see, well, is it a connection between my dad and I, or is this going to work for other people as well? And so I just worked on lots of people and learned every course I could and read everything I could about it, and just saw that this is not anything particularly, this is not wild and out there and completely away with the fairies. This is really, really based on scientific principles that are easy to understand and easy to learn. And then I became an instructor, and I decided I really wanted everybody to learn it because it is easy, and it's just something that makes a lot of difference to people's lives. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, a really significant amount of the time, and therefore it's something I felt that I wanted to share with others, and so that was the beginning of the journey, basically.
Can you talk us through the scientific principles?
Yeah.
Because I think people enjoy hearing that, to understand
Yeah,
that it's not away
definitely.
with the fairies, whatever that means.
I know, whatever that means. So, in terms of the scientific principles, we all are resonating at a frequency. And I think probably a lot of people that are listening to this will have heard the word resonance before. So things of a similar nature will always harmonize. So that can be, if we look at animals in nature, if you hear crickets, they're all making their cricketing sound together. Or women who share a house will often get their periods after a couple of months, they'll harmonize. And that's biological entrainment. And so we tend to come together and harmonize, and we see that a lot with animals in nature, how they'll move together and they'll make sounds together. And the way that it works is that either the lower frequency will come up to the higher frequency, or the reverse. The higher frequency will come down to the lower frequency, or the third option is they'll meet in the middle. And that means things will come together and harmonize. So an easier way to explain that is social entrainment. For us, more so easier to understand than with animals, meaning if you've ever been to a party or a gathering and someone comes in the room and they don't have to say anything, but they have a really happy energy, a really high energy. And other people start to entrain to that. So that's the scientific principle, is entrainment. So they start to entrain to that energy. They start to come up to it. And on the flip side, if you've ever been around someone who's really low, it's a really strong dominant energy.
Yeah.
So they don't have to say anything, but everybody else in the room will come down to that energy, because that's the scientific principles of resonance and entrainment. And you can see them everywhere. You can see these principles literally everywhere. So grandfather clocks against a wall, if you brought them all into the room, they would be ticking independently, and after a few days they would start to tick together.
Really?
Yeah, because the sound waves would transfer through the wall.
Wow.
And they would resonate. So this is resonance.
Oh, I love this.
So it's really simple to understand, right? It's not, so all we're working with is resonance and entrainment, these two principles. Another example, not such a nice one, but so one example that we talk about in the workshops is that in a laboratory setting, disembodied animal hearts that are, I know it's horrible, they'll come in, they'll beat independently, but after a few days they will beat as one. Yeah, they'll beat at the same kind. And the other example, the most powerful example, is new mother and baby.
Yeah.
Resonance and entrainment. The baby can be in another room,
And the mother knows when it needs something.
Yeah.
I remember that with breastfeeding.
That's the perfect example.
When the baby would need milk, even if I didn't hear them crying. Or...
Even if you were out.
Yeah.
So based on that being how we are wired, if I use techniques to bring my energy up to a really high level in a healing session and I'm with someone else, they will start to entrain to that energy, which will basically remind their immune system or their own innate healing mechanism to kick in, and then their body does its own healing. So in quantum touch, we never say we heal anyone else. In the same way that you can't digest someone else's food for them, it's their body doing it. All we're doing is creating a space that allows their body to come up to a higher level of energy and then do its own. It knows exactly what to do to go back into alignment. So those are the scientific principles. And because of that, because it's one of those modalities that really explains things just very simply, it's literally resonance and entrainment, it has attracted a lot of interest from medical professionals. And so I found early on, from literally the second or third workshop that I was teaching, that I was getting nurses predominantly coming on the workshops who wanted something to help themselves to navigate through such an intense job, but also, they're nurses for a reason. They love to care. And in the beginning, when I started teaching in 2007, it would be much more under the radar. They would say, yes, I love it and I use it in my life, but I'd never use it, or I'd never tell anyone that at work, Now it's not like that.
Really?
Yeah.
You think people are becoming more open?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a fair amount of scientists, doctors, nurses coming on the workshops and really enjoying it, really getting a huge amount out of it for their own lives. It's because it's actually a very simple set of techniques.
So it's a way for people themselves to help themselves relax and be in a state of healing and
literally stimulate your own immune system. Yeah, and relax.
What I wanted to ask was, how often were you treating your dad to see those results? Was it daily?
No, it was about 3 times a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Because the longer something has been in the body, sometimes it needs a bit more to help it to shift. Not always, but I sort of went for it quite intensely.
Yeah. Wow, it's so interesting. So when you go in to train others, what do you have to do to prepare yourself in order to, because you were saying about resonance. Now, obviously there might be some people coming in whose energies might be on, like you say, the lower end. How do you prepare yourself to not take that into your own energy?
That's a great question. So I always begin each workshop with a prayer and intention, and I have specific techniques that I ure from something else I teach called permissioning and transformation, which really directly addresses protecting the energy field, or really more so, rather than the word protecting, more so just strengthening the energy field so that you are feeling your own energy more so than everyone else. Because it can be, you've got a big room full of lots of people, obviously there's a lot of things happening, but then what happens after a while, usually after about an hour, is when everyone gets in their own flow of their own breath and everything, it tends to even out in the room anyway. So
Is it an effort for you sometimes to keep your energy where you need it to be, depending on how many people are in the room and what their energies are like? Because I'm very much affected by other people's energy, so sometimes I will feel my energy dipping to mirror other people, and then I realise that and I think, okay, bring myself back up to what I feel is, the right equilibrium for me.
I don't find that in workshops, because generally people that are there, the majority of the people will come in quite open and excited, and so if there are a couple of lower vibrations in the room, they'll be
evened out.
Evened out. I'd be more inclined to find that in a shopping centre.
Right, yeah.
Me.
Yeah. We were together last night because we had a very lovely ladies' evening, which actually is a very good example of raising vibrations, because that's what we kind of all did, and the energy was so high and beautiful. You said something about yourself in your introduction that I just love, about you operate so much in the alternative world that you find it an effort sometimes
Yeah.
to bring yourself back and adapt to the mainstream world. I'd like you to open that up a bit, because I love that. I love that about you. When our mutual friend introduced us a few years ago, that's what she said to me. Karina's this amazing spiritual being. You'll never meet anyone like her. But because she's so spiritual and she operates on such a high spiritual level, she almost can't operate on a human level with certain things. And now we've been friends for long enough, I have seen that in action. But I love that about you, and I want you to explain that from your point of view, because I think it's amazing.
That's so funny. I think that is basically that. Well, I know what she meant was on a practical level.
Yes,
on a very practical, day-to-day level,
like the banalities of human life.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Because I'm spending a lot of my day working with people online, and we're talking about amazing subjects, and we're working with healing, and we're doing the breathing and all of these things, and it's almost like you're in an you are in an alternative sphere. Yeah. And then for me, going back out into, my work is not 9 to 5, working with practical things in an office and all of that. And I did that years ago, and I really enjoyed it. Only the social aspect mainly. But for me, sometimes coming out of my work mode into into daily kind of practice,
school runs and all that stuff. Yeah,
is I have to sort of I have to ground myself more and say, okay, back to reality.
That's just an
for
example.
This moment.
Yeah, I think that's just an example generally of resonance, right? Because I don't think that's just you, but it is an example of resonance in that that's how you're operating because of what you're specifically focusing on, which is energy and healing. But if I'm immersed in writing and I have to pull myself away to go and pick up the kids or do the food shop, also I'm not there, I'm not fully there, right? So is that resonance in action, would you say?
Yes, definitely. It's intense focus on something else, so it kind of pulls you away a bit. But still, it's good practice.
Yeah. So I really want to talk about permissioning and transformation because you have kindly imparted that on me, and it's been amazing. But before we do, I just want to go back in your journey. What was it like to be in a Louise Hay seminar? Number one, meeting such an amazing person as Louise Hay, but also so young. You were 12.
Well, so I didn't actually meet Louise. It was one of her. It was her teachers that came to the UK, and were teaching her work, and it was incredible. It was really, really incredible. It was a special time. It was actually pre-social media, pre-internet.
I can imagine. I see some videos on YouTube of that, like 80s. I don't just anyone emerging in that time. Tony Robbins and Louise Hay. It was very special because it was new and it was authentic.
It was very authentic, and You know, my dad was very much into A Course in Miracles and all this kind of stuff. And it was a movement. It was a big movement of that time. And the people who were involved and who were learning all these incredible techniques and just really about law of attraction and manifesting and opening the heart, they just brought their kids along.
Yeah.
And so we were just there.
Wow.
We were just hanging out.
How nice. How nice to grow up like that.
I feel very, very blessed. Very blessed. Because it was, for me, the quantum touch, all it did was put into a practical way for healing everything I kind of had been raised with. All the principles are the same.
Yeah.
It's just it made it practical and a way to apply it for physical healing.
And sometimes when you've been raised with something, you don't appreciate it because it's just part of life. So I know that happened with me. My parents had, taken me to homeopaths, and I always joke that my parents took me to spiritual healers before they took me to conventional doctors, when I was diagnosed when I was really young. But because of that, when I grew up and I got really, really sick when I was like 17, 18, I thought, oh, well, obviously the homeopathy didn't work. None of this is going to, I'm going to do what the doctors are telling me because I'm an adult. And so I did, and became very, very sick. But I kind of needed that to show me what all the healing modalities that my parents had felt so strongly about had done for me to strengthen my body over the years. And I got sick, yes, but compared to some of the other kids who I grew up with, it was so manageable until that time, and just I kept going downhill. There are many reasons for that, obviously, but yeah, I think when you grow up with something, it's really hard to fully appreciate it until you become a grown-up yourself and can implement those things into your life and see how they work for you, not because they've been told, because you've been told to do it, but because it's in your heart now.
Totally. Totally.
So let's talk about permissioning and transformation.
Okay.
And the whole journey to getting there, because I
Yeah.
love that.
Okay. So on the second Quantum Touch workshop I ever taught, somebody attended the workshop called Kay Lee. He's from Malaysia. And I pretty much knew when I met him that he was going to be a big teacher. And all of us in the group were quite fascinated by him. He clearly had these really incredible talents and abilities. He had just finished a double degree at Cambridge and was just a total genius, and had really, really strong mind abilities and psychic abilities. And there's a modality called photo reading, which is where you can learn to take in information from books and straight into the subconscious and train your mind to literally read pages as a photo. And he was at that time their poster boy because he'd completed a degree at Cambridge using the photo reading techniques.
Oh, wow.
And he's just total genius basically. And he came in and he was there just for the curiosity and to meet like-minded people. But really, he basically became a big teacher for me and a mentor over the years. And then I'd say in 2016, he was already by that point back in Malaysia for several years. He emailed me and said, I've got something really potent to teach you, a set of techniques which I think you're going to really like. And at that time, I was overdue with my second baby by like 13 days, and it was getting to be quite stressful. And he taught me over email these techniques, and I used them, and I went into this instant state of deep, deep peace that I had never experienced before in all the years of doing the healing work. And I said to him, wow, this is something else. But I'm literally about to have a baby. So I used it. It took me into deep space of calm. I did end up having the birth that I wanted. It was all wonderful. And I, after that, used it here and there, but I was too deeply immersed in having a new baby. And some time after that, I picked it back up and decided to start using it again as a daily practice, and really felt that it took me into a space of deep peace, deep peace, and opened up the belief space, created enough space in the mind to bring in new perspectives and to really start creating new realities by changing beliefs very, very subtly. So I thought I'm going to play with this with clients and see how it goes and what we can work with. And the results have been, from the get-go, were incredible. Literally working with people with subjects I would never have really taken on before because it wasn't my realm. Working with people with deep depression, working with people, I've worked now with a lot of people who are stressed about having a late birth. For some reason, I after that attracted quite a few mothers who heard about it and contacted me and said, I'm really overdue and I'm very stressed, I'm very scared, and I've heard about what you teach or whatever. So I've worked with overdue mothers and babies with incredible results, truly beautiful results, and all kinds of things, really. And on the on the first workshop I taught, the permissioning workshop, I happened to have a senior nurse from St Thomas's in London on the workshop, and she went back, used the techniques, just didn't tell anyone what she was doing. And after a few weeks, her manager at work said to her, what are you doing differently? Why are you so calm all the time in situations that used to really stress you out? And so she told her, I've learnt these techniques, and her manager said, well, whatever you're doing is really incredible. I'd like you to write those down as your CPD points. Because nurses have to update their continual professional development points every 3 years, I think it is. So she said, I want this to count for CPD points because you've clearly learned something that is transferring at work. Wow. She'd never taken the workshop, and this Yasmin, the nurse, said to me, this is unheard of. You don't just accredit something that you've never heard of for CPD points for nurses and midwifery, unless someone's really can clearly visibly see how effective it is. And so every door with this modality has opened itself like that, really incredibly. And it's been an amazing journey with it. So now people are hearing about it. During lockdown, I did, at the very beginning of lockdown, I worked with people who were on the front line, just helping with fears and just really teaching people to get into a space of calm and neutrality, to allow, all the condensed, stuck thoughts to create space to pass. And so for the permissioning and transformation, you could describe it as stress relief. You could describe it as something a lot deeper. It's wonderful. So that's something I'm now doing a lot with.
Can you talk a bit more about it practically, like what it actually is, so people can understand what they would be doing?
Sort of.
In a roundabout way. I know it's deep, and it's not deep. It's there's a lot to it.
There's three aspects of permissioning and transformation. There's pathways, processes, and protocols. And the pathways and processes we teach in the longer 2-day workshops, which go more deeply into resetting subconscious beliefs and doing much deeper processes, which take place over a longer period of time to really, work on the deeper layers. But then we have something called protocols, which are mainly what I use with clients because it is easy to learn, quick to learn, and provides quick relief and release. So the techniques are, I'm not going to go into the techniques because it would not do it justice, and I would also get in trouble for that. But really it is very much about, it's called permissioning and transformation. So the key word is permission. So it's really about overcoming any resistance, because when we try to force ourselves to take on a belief that we know isn't real, like when someone's unwell and they're trying to convince themselves, I am well, and it can work. It definitely can work. Affirmations, are are a wonderful thing. But in order for them to work, somebody's mind has to first be peaceful. Now, often, in order to accept it, the mind has to... You can't use an affirmation when you're in a frenzied state and expect it to work, because it will only create more resistance. So often when somebody needs an affirmation, if they're reaching really deeply for a new belief, it's because they're in a state of stress. So they won't be in that calm state. For an affirmation to really sit and be absorbed, you have to use it when you are in a deep state. So what permissioning does is it automatically guides you to that state of deep peace. And only then you will shortcut straight in, because your mind can accept it. There's no resistance, because you're in that deep state of relaxation. And when we work with the permissioning, it is not affirmations. It is a different thing, because we're giving ourselves permission to do something or not to do something. And it seems very simplistic, the protocols. And on the surface it is, but very typical to Kay, who created it. There are so many hidden things embedded within it that make it successful, so many subtleties that bypass all the resistance the mind can create, that it just opens doors. So it could be, I had a client who was about to have an endoscopy, and she had immense fear of the whole process. And so I taught her the techniques and how to go in, giving herself permission to actually have a peaceful experience. And she phoned me afterwards and she said the medical team that were there said they had never had anybody go in so relaxed to a procedure, and they thought I was on a Valium.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
she said when I went in and sat down, they said, "Oh, good, you've taken something to calm yourself. You've taken a Valium or whatever." And she said, "No, I haven't." And
Wow.
she explained to them what it is, and that's really common with permissioning. You're just you drop into that state. So it works on taking you out the mind into the body and putting you in a calm enough state that you can actually begin to work with the mind.
It's powerful, and you were kind enough to do it with me to help me with a few things that I've been working on, and I've been using it for must be coming up to 8 weeks now, and it's powerful. It is. And what I actually do now, it's part of my daily meditation practice. So that's the first thing I do now.
Amazing.
Instead of my mantra meditation being first, that's first, because that gets me into that peaceful state. I'll give an example of what it's done for me. So the thing that you actually said to me you wanted it to help me with was Braxton's eating, and this so-called feeding disorder, and my stress about it, feeling like he wasn't getting enough nutrients because he's not eating the right foods. So I've been doing the permissioning and transformation, and what has happened, Braxton hasn't started miraculously eating vegetables. He is eating more food and his appetite is increasing, which I think can only be a good thing, and will hopefully mean that at some point he will start eating good foods. But it's also opened up doors and things with me to change my attitude towards it. For example, I was then put on the path of Alex, who we've also had on this season, the human design reader, and human design for children, to help parents know how to navigate their children based on their own unique design. And she was put on my path directly at that time and explained to me that based on Braxton's chart, his health is not directly impacted by his physical food nutrition. We are all impacted, some of us will be directly impacted by nutrition. Some of us our mood and our brain will affect our immune system more. Some of us it will be the environment. And I'm a big believer in this and always have been. Just by me hearing that gave me the permission to sit back and say, right, okay, I'm just going to let him get on with it. And I feel better and I feel calmer, you know, and he's calmer because I'm not driving him mad. And so that's one of the examples of, I think, what it's done for me. It's opening doors, and it's powerful for many other ways in terms of what it's doing for my meditation practice, because it really helps me get into a deeper meditative state. And not that that's always my intention with meditation, but it does do that. Actually, the other night, Vida wouldn't sleep. She was going through a bit of separation anxiety, and she's never done this before. When I put her down in her cot for a few days, she just wouldn't let me leave, and she wanted me to sit, so I sat down next to her cot. And she said, "Hold hand, Mummy." So I was holding her hand through the bars, and bars, I hate saying that, it sounds like a cage, doesn't it? And I was sat on the floor, and she was falling asleep, but she wouldn't let go of my hand. So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to sit here and do my permissioning. So I did, and it was great. And so I wasn't annoyed about, I've got to get up and I've got to do this, because I was just sitting there feeling peaceful.
Amazing.
So it is a great modality. I love it. And I need to learn more about it for sure. I need to do one of the workshops.
Well, definitely. One of the things that we're about to, in a couple of months, or maybe earlier, release is a sleep workshop. Because we didn't know, well, Kay knew, I didn't know when we started teaching it, that an amazing side effect is that it relaxes people into a state of sleep really quickly and really easily. And so we've developed one. And then I started working with people with sleep issues who are having incredible results with it. And so I'm doing a bespoke workshop for sleep.
Wow. Oh.
Which will be...
I think a lot of people listening to this will be interested in that, because I get so many people contacting me, I've got insomnia, I can't sleep,
really
and
common.
what do I do? Yeah.
Honestly, in day one of the first workshop, I had somebody who started using the permissions who had to literally lay on the floor because he became so sleepy. I called Kay, I said, "There's someone half asleep in the workshop." He went, "Oh, I should have warned you." Because it relaxes the mind so much that people literally who haven't experienced that depth of relaxation for that long, all their body wants to do is sleep to heal. And so
important.
Yeah, it's a brilliant thing. It's the body's intelligence saying, yeah, you finally let go of the mind. You've let go, you've created space. You haven't slept for so long. Now you need to sleep. Yeah. And so we did a trial pilot workshop where I worked with a few people with serious sleep issues, and we had some incredible results.
Really?
So yeah, we're gonna create a sleep workshop.
Obviously, we'll put all your details in the show notes so people know about that. You touched on before working with nurses on the front line and helping them with fear. I'd like for you to talk about that, because when I'm having a bad day, you're the first person I contact.
That's so nice.
And you bring me back down and you give me some advice that helps me realign my energies. Let's talk about fear and what it does and why we need to regulate our fear, especially at the moment. I know people listening to this, wherever you stand, whatever your stance is with what's going on at the moment, and everyone is standing somewhere else with it, there is fear. For whatever reason that fear is, whether your fear is of catching the virus, whether your fear is of our freedoms being taken away, or your fear is of wearing a mask, or your fear is people around you who aren't wearing masks. There is fear everywhere.
Yeah, and it is everywhere, and it's a very overpowering emotion, and it's something we all experience in different ways at different times over different things. As you said, my fear could be the complete opposite of your fear, and fear is irrational as well. It can be very irrational, and it can really be very paralyzing for everyone. So having the ability to release fear frees up so much energy in the body. It really does. And that's something that, and it applies to everything. The women that get in touch about fear of being induced before birth, that their fear, I would say that probably people's biggest fears that I've worked with would be that type of fear, even bigger than some of the fears that you've mentioned. And having it get stuck and giving it somewhere to go,
Right.
and to
Moving it
release,
through you.
to move it, is what creates the space for a new perspective.
Yeah.
Because one thing that Kay's taught me over the years is everything is just perspective.
Yes.
It
I
is
love
just
that, yeah.
perspective. It's
So
perception and perspective. And as soon as, and we hold on to our perspectives, whether it's fear or whatever, we hold on to them for dear life. You know, it's as if it's the only way and the only truth. And as soon as you give it somewhere to go, and we've got specific techniques in the permissioning for that, and give it somewhere to move to, you create a glimpse of space which allows a new perspective to come in, that it could be a different way. Because we're so used to, it's like we drive the same route to the supermarket every day. You know, you just drive the same route. You wouldn't even think, unless you put the sat nav on, it takes you a different way. You wouldn't even think of changing the route because that's the route. It's the same with our thoughts. They will always take the same route unless you give them permission or a signal to take another route. And as soon as you do, the mind is smarter than we give it credit for. It will. If you give it an easier way, it will. But we have to give it that signal or that permission to do that. There is another way to think about this. And all of us, whether it's holistic lifestyle or totally not a holistic lifestyle, we're just so used to thinking the same way. And so with fear, having the ability to just create even a tiny bit of space to see something a little bit differently frees you up.
And what happens then when you're freed from that? What is the difference?
Everything. First of all, it's like so much energy has been used to feel fear that you're taking energy away from other stuff that needs to happen in the mind and the body. Same with anger.
Yeah.
And when you express it or allow it to move, then you free up all this energy in the body and mind to attend to things that actually do need processing. So you have more physical energy, much more physical energy, much more happiness. Everything is lighter. Because when we're so tired and we're so weighted, other than from lack of sleep, and you know, I'm not talking about if you have a new baby or a child, but generally lack of sleep is caused by the mind holding on so tightly it won't let you relax. It doesn't even feel safe to.
Yeah.
So it's keeping you awake, not as a mistake, as a fight or flight response, to be alert to threats, to fear. So having the ability to release that fearful energy allows you to sleep better, allows you to think more clearly. It's everything. I'd say it's...
And the immune system, you know.
100%.
Massive deal. I know Tony Robbins talks about this, all these guys, you know.
Yeah, and it's something we all are exposed to. None of us are immune to feeling fear. It's an innate thing. It's just having the ability to not let it completely... to catch yourself when it starts to rise up bigger than, you know, feeling great. So
I know it's been a massive deal for me with this trigeminal neuralgia. I realised that my biggest issue with it was the fear. The fear of it coming back, the fear of it being here, the fear of, oh my God, is this my life now? Is this going to be it forever? And that's what I've been working on more than anything, not focusing on so much on the pain, but focusing on moving the fear out of myself, because it's not going to help. It's not going to help me.
no, definitely, and you're spot on with that. It's such a powerful emotion.
Yeah. You do a lot of charity work, and you work with a lot of charities with what you do. I'd like to know more about that.
So one of the greatest pleasures, I love working, well, anyone that, you know, wants to learn or listen, or at whatever level, you know, charitable organisations I love to help and work with. So for example, I also teach mindfulness, and I had this amazing experience a few years ago. I was invited to, somebody who attended a quantum touch workshop was a physiotherapist for people in Parliament and some very high profile people. And she was a member of the College of Medicine, and she invited me along for a convention type event. And so at the end of the day, and I'd heard all these amazing speakers, incredible speakers who had spoken about bringing in alternative and holistic health to hospitals. And there were some very, very prominent doctors there who really, really want to see East and West complement each other. And at the end of the day, I just went up to this amazing man. He's not, unfortunately, alive anymore. Professor Aidan Halligan, who was... he was head of obstetrics at UCH and also on the board. And I thanked him for the most inspiring talk that he had given. And he said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I thought, gosh, he thinks I'm a doctor or something. I said, "Oh, I teach quantum touch energy healing." And he said, "Oh, do give me your card." And so I gave it to him. And the next day I was completely blown away. He'd emailed me.
Wow.
And said, "So lovely to meet you, and had a look at what you do. I work with a charity." He basically started this incredible charity for homeless people in London, having seen so many outside of UCH who needed healthcare and had so many needs that were not being met. And so he started up an incredible charity and called Pathway. And he wanted me to come in and link. And so I connected with them, who they then connected me to Groundswell, who would do a huge amount of work with homeless people in London. And I went down to Groundswell and I met the CEO, and he was so open. And the amazing thing about that charity is all the people that work there, or most of them, have once been homeless. Wow. And so there's a very, very strong energy going on there. And it was unlike any group I had ever worked with before, to be honest, because we were coming from completely different pages, and I felt so humbled to be in their presence. I mean, I can learn from them a huge amount, more than they can learn from me about resilience, having lived on the streets and the things that they had been through. And so the CEO at that charity invited me to do mindfulness courses with them and teach them about well-being and a lot of the things that I do. And so I did, over a period of a few weeks, work with them. I had to really gain their trust. And I thought they were incredible. And what I thought was, wow, how amazing that you've got all this going on. There's so much going on in London that is bringing all of these skills to the forefront that we just don't know about. And it was really amazing to work with them. And then so I've worked with charities like them, and also recently did, through the COVID situation, obviously we've got much more access to people who are in, all over the world and different places. And so I've taught some women who are working out in Guyana, working with children's charities and teaching them meditation skills to then teach out there. Taught this, working with the staff at Trust for Developing Communities in Brighton, who do some amazing work with all kinds of different groups of people who need help. And recently I launched a meditation app, and so now that app is being used by different charities, different groups. Wow. The Aging Well project that they're doing, that they're using with older people, from that to, and that's one thing that hugely excites me, is I've put the meditations onto a phone line so that older people who don't have a smartphone can dial in and listen to the meditations.
Wow, that's so innovative.
So I'm so excited about that, because I don't like the thought of people being excluded just because they don't have the right technology.
Yeah, I so agree with that, yeah.
And older people at the moment who are in their homes and they're isolated, and and they don't have the technology like we do to just switch on an app or whatever. So so there's that going on, and I'm always happy to help and work with any charity that that asks.
I love that about you. Do you think then that East and West are meeting, and that we are coming into are we shifting a bit? Because sometimes when you look at it, you can feel that there is this shift happening, and modern medicine sometimes does merge really well with complementary therapies, the alternative modalities. I don't like to call them alternative. But other times it feels like that's not happening at all. What's your experience of it, do you think?
Both are correct.
Yeah, perspective again, right?
Yeah, I mean, you go to the College of Medicine and you see doctors to the royal family standing there giving talks about how wonderful holistic medicine is.
Well, the royal family are treated first and foremost with homeopathy before they do. That's their first port of call.
Right.
And they always have been. I always say that to people when they use things like homeopathy as a last resort. Why do we think the royal family, who probably have access to the most honest, truthful, accurate information in the world, would choose that if there wasn't something to it?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the doctors that I've met at my workshops are open. And you know what I think? I think it's the more confident people with less ego are open.
So true. Yeah, I've noticed that with doctors in my own life. Yeah.
Because if you are so assured with yourself and where you are at your level professionally, and you come in with humility and you don't think you know everything, then of course you're open. And even if you then learn it and say, actually, I don't believe in it, it's not for me, at least you were open enough to experience something new.
Yeah.
And I think both are correct. You've got lots of healthcare professionals who are really, really exploring alternative health or complementary I don't even like to call them complementary therapies. Modalities or
healing modalities.
And then you've got lots who aren't. I'm not exposed to the ones who are not.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Right, I am. And my experience of it has been that on the whole, I don't want to generalise, but on the whole, in my experience, the older healthcare professionals are much more open.
Agree.
Because I think, and again, this is from my own experience, when doctors come out of medical school, they're excited about all the things they've learnt from medical school, and that's a very specific system in place with specific institutions at the top filtering down to what these students are being taught. And they're not being taught anything outside of that. So they're assuming that what they're being taught is the way it is. But then they kind of go through their careers and experience happens, life happens, and they see things happen that are anomalies time and time again, and people's healing experiences and things that seem to be impossible when they're at medical school happen later down the line, and they see miracles, so-called miracles, and they open their minds a bit more. So in my experience, it's always been the older healthcare professionals that have been more open to my way of doing things, especially, and to hearing about new things.
100%. I mean, in a couple of months ago, I taught a Quantum Touch Level 1 workshop, attended by various people, one of which was a 60-year-old professor of oncology from India who was in charge of oncology department in his hospital. And I said to him, what brings you to this workshop? And he said, oh, this is nothing new for me.
Wow.
You know, he said, there are many things I cannot explain. And he said, I don't see, this is not so out there. You know, the mind and the body are connected.
I think in India it's more accepted. You know, in India people do go to see homeopaths or use Ayurveda before, Western modalities.
I think it just needs to be more talked about so people don't feel it's a private thing. But because the truth is I'm not really exposed to, and that's very, I made a decision when I started teaching, influenced by my cousin. She said, and she's not into anything that I'm into, and she said to me when I first qualified as a quantum touch teacher, she said, you know what, from the side and from someone who's not into healing and things, if I were you, I wouldn't try to explain it to anybody until you're really confident, because they will knock your confidence. And it was such an amazing piece of advice, which I kind of took very seriously, because I still don't. I've never exposed myself to groups of people. I've never wanted to or tried to
you are very good at that.
convince anybody of anything, simply because I would find that quite tiring, and I don't have the need to. I'm not trying to sell a concept. It works. If you want to find out more, here I am.
Yeah.
And that has served me well. So I've never really exposed myself to any negativity or doctors or people who don't believe, because I've got no interest in trying to convince anyone of anything.
Yeah. I guess it's harder when you're in it, in terms of, I've been to doctors who saw me in a wheelchair and then see me putting my leg over my head, and it must be a coincidence, you know, and that's infuriating. And then, but you don't have the option but to sit there and go, but it's not a coincidence, you know, because you want to tell them all these things. It didn't come out of thin air. I worked bloody hard, and these are the things I did, and hey, it works. Maybe tell some of your other patients, you know. So it can get a bit exhausting.
Yeah, I think the only time I was ever challenged was publicly was somebody who came to a workshop, invited me to their workplace to give a talk on Wellness Week at the British Government Department of Energy and Climate Change.
Wow.
So I rocked up and I thought, this is going to be great. What an interesting crowd. And I'd say 80% of the room were really intrigued and interested. And there was one guy who put up his hand and he said, "Prove to me it works," you know. And I thought, oh, great, here we go. And so I thought to myself, well, no. So I said, I'm not trying to prove to you it works. You know, if you're interested, you're welcome to come learn or have a session, whatever. But, you know, I'm not here to sell you something. I'm not here. I have, you know, it doesn't serve me or you. I'm not here to try and convince you of anything. I'm simply sharing something with you that you may or may not wish. And he was so taken aback by that. And that I really remain quite strong on my approach of, you can come to me and learn, or to anyone and learn, but when we try to convince others that their way is wrong, all we're met with is resistance. You know,
You've been a great teacher for me with that lesson. That has definitely been something you've imparted upon me.
Oh, thank you.
We are running out of time.
Okay.
But before we end, I always end with a little segment called All About You, so the listeners can get to know you a little bit. So it's just 5 questions in quick succession. If you could offer one piece of advice to help people manage their daily lives and be happier, what would it be?
Meditate.
Good one. The self-growth book that's had the most profound effect on you?
It was a book about gratitude, called Garden of Gratitude. And this was many years ago. This was when my dad was first diagnosed, and it showed me how to find gratitude in anything.
That's lovely. One thing from your daily self-care ritual that's non-negotiable?
Meditation.
All right, and a bit of fun to end. If lockdown was to happen again and you were stuck indoors, there was no work, no TV, but you could learn one skill and read one book, what would they be?
The skill I would learn would be gardening and growing my own vegetables, because at the moment Simon is in charge of it and I just eat them. And I always,
sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to do what he could do.
Yeah. And the book?
I would read Spiritual Nutrition by Dr. Gabriel Cousins, which I've had on my shelf for at least 10 years. But it is so thick.
Yeah, intimidating.
It is an intimidating size, full of an amazing amount of knowledge.
Amazing. Just very quickly then, where can people find you? Quickly talk us through your app and where everything can be found, and if people want to get in touch with you and come on your workshops or book a session. Okay.
So I have 2 websites, karinagrant.co.uk or hichi, hichi-life.com, where you can see all the courses and everything that I do. And there's a meditation app, a mindfulness app, which is being used in various workplaces at the moment. And
it's so lovely. And there are so many apps out there, but honestly, please use Hichi. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. And that is, if you type in Hai Chi Life Mindfulness, it will come up.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My first in-person recording for a long time.
Yay.
And it's been lovely and also difficult because, as I always say to you, the energy field around you is so strong. I find it hard to look directly at you, so I have to keep looking away because you are this energetic force. And it's amazing because your energy I just feel it, and I come out of a room with you and I feel empowered and ready to start my day. So
That's so sweet. Thank
for being
you.
here and for offering all your wisdom and your energy and your loveliness.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
The Reconditioned podcast is proud to support Solace Women's Aid, who supports survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence, working with over 27,000 people each year to build safe lives and strong futures.